This is Callum, and he's 7 weeks old. He's been struggling with breastfeeding and like latching ever since he was born. And there's just this overall tightness in his head, neck, and jaw that we've been experiencing. And so basically every night starting at like 6 p.m., he just like screams in pain and he curls up into like a ball and he won't eat for like 3 or 4 hours or sleep. Like he just screams. And we've tried chiropractic, we've tried cranial sacral therapy, we've tried, just going to the pediatrician, and nothing has really worked thus far. So we're hoping that he can get a little bit more relief today because he's in a lot of pain. He'll sleep from like 10 p.m. and then it's like 2-hour increments throughout the night, but then by like 5 or 6 in the morning, he's woken up and he's kind of uncomfortable again. We have a few hours during the day where he's not super uncomfortable, but our nights are definitely probably the worst. We've seen a pediatric dentist. He doesn't have tongue ties. We've been trying the little exercises on his mouth to see if that would help, and I don't really think it's made like much of a difference, but yeah, we've just been told he's just super tight in his mid-back, neck, and jaw.
We'll start with his hips and his hip flexors, his lumbar spine. We'll do a little bit in his legs, because if all of his lumbar and everything is being pulled forward, that's going to cause tension all the way up to his neck. We have my stepdad comes in and he's kind of forward a little bit, and I need a big pillow behind his head to start with, and once I get his hip flexors released, he can put his head all the way down on the table with no discomfort. So we know that there's a definite correlation between low back tightness and pain, and then what it does with the rest of the body down and up.
Yeah.
We're gonna work on his neck all the way through, to the attachments around the base of his skull, and get those things released. The reason we're discussing what we're going to do now is because he's going to be crying quite a bit while we're doing this stuff because of this. The way the human body works is this: if you press into a muscle that is the proper length, you should be able to go to the bone with no pain.
Wow.
Right? So that's not going to be the case with most of the things that we're dealing with today. If you push into a muscle that is tight and contracted, it will hurt when you push into it. And when you push into a muscle that's really tight, it will really hurt. Now, the process is very simple. When we're pressing into a muscle, it's not to hurt it. It's to block blood supply to it temporarily so it can't get oxygen, so it can't breathe, so it can't contract. If the muscle can't contract, it has to relax. When it relaxes, then we'll start moving that muscle through a range of motion that it's supposed to be able to go comfortably until that tissue lengthens completely. That's the muscle and the fascial sheath. Once that happens, they'll stop crying. Then we move on to the next area and the next area and the next area and the next area until usually babies are completely stretched out, straight, and usually sleeping.
Yeah.
And so what we've done is we've made them comfortable in a neutral position so that they can sleep on their backs comfortably without being all curled up. Everybody goes back to fetal. Why? It's because if they go back here where the muscles are tight, it shortens them and makes it less uncomfortable. The problem is you can't stay like this, then you stretch out and then it hurts because it's pulling at the attachments again. And that's why they keep waking up over and over and over again. So the goal is to get the latch fixed so they can breastfeed effectively, and then make sure that his tummy, all of the hip flexors and everything that are pulling on the spine and the hips are relaxed so that everything can sit back where it's supposed to be to take the pressure off the nerves coming out of the spine in his lumbar spine that is affecting his digestion and that type of thing.
Okay.
Feet this way. Also been diagnosed as having a slight form of torticollis. Well, torticollis is just where if the neck is tighter on this side than the other, then he'll turn his head more often this way. And then that will make it uncomfortable to turn this way. It also makes it very difficult for him to latch properly, because then if he turns his head a certain way, whether it's this way or that way, if the muscles get tight, then it also affects his ability to latch, because it's so uncomfortable, and it's causing the muscles to bind down on nerves that are causing all of this other reaction. So when we get those things lengthened, then his latch should change dramatically. Yeah. You can stroke his head, you can hold his hand, you can talk to him and all that kind of stuff, just to make him as comfortable as he can.
You're so handsome.
So this leg was probably pulled up higher in the womb than this one. And what that does is actually creates pre-birth postural deficits. In other words, this comes up higher. This will pull the hip and the spine, the hip forward more. Right at the front of his hip. And we're just pushing with relatively light pressure, but you're going to see how he deals with that. And it's like one finger on the iliacus muscle, and he's already felt it.
It's about like this much pressure.
Yeah. We're not using a lot because it's not necessary. We're just trying to block blood supply right now. 97% of the pain receptors in your body are in your soft tissue.
Yeah.
97%. So if nobody's really studying what soft tissue does to a human body, how in the world can they say with any confidence that the baby or anybody doesn't have pain? The only reason I can do this and feel really good about it is I know that without this, he would have a much tougher time growing up. So this is the same pressure, same place, and now we're moving this a lot more through a much bigger range of motion.
Yeah, buddy.
And what you'll notice is once we get through this one, this leg will stay down further than the other one, and many times just straighten out because it's now comfortable in that position. The other thing, the important aspect of this as well, is if the hips and the spine are situated back where they're supposed to be, the nerves that are adjacent to the lumbar spine aren't getting pinched and sending incorrect signals to the digestive system, so that he'll be much more comfortable all the time.
Okay.
He'll release later and yes.
He's like constipated.
Yeah. And how many people deal with constipation and diarrhea and all kinds of other issues as they get older? And it's like nobody's addressed this.
Yeah.
And it really is just, it's soft tissue.
Yeah.
And notice I don't have him hooked up to a machine. Yeah, so this is typically if the iliacus is tight on one side, the psoas is tight on the other side. It's mainly in adults because they're compensating and trying to hold themselves up correctly.
Okay.
But his right iliacus was way tighter than the other. And typically with an adult, when we see the iliacus when we see a leg length discrepancy, that's caused by the ilium being pulled forward and rotating the hip so it shortens the leg. And so typically, right out of the chute, what we're doing is lengthening their hip flexors so we can get their legs the proper length, so you don't have a disparity between one side and the other. That corrects a lot of issues right away. Now, see, so this leg was down further in the womb. The other one was pulled up higher. And that's
kind of makes sense based on where he was. I was thinking about it.
When you look at sonogram pictures, if you ever do, you'll see that he was cocked in such a way that those muscles got short and tight. You can let that just come down so you can get used to straightening that out. Swaddling should not even be an issue after this. As a matter of fact, he won't want to be swaddled because he'll be more comfortable in a neutral position.
Yeah. He actually doesn't really even like being swaddled because his legs, we were told to like have his legs down, and that's probably why he's hated being swaddled so much, is because it hurts to have his legs down.
Yeah. Well, look, you want what's best for your kids. You want what's best for your grandkids. You want what's best for your dogs, even. And people just really go to the sources that they know to go to, and they don't have a whole lot of answers. He's already, you see his legs are out much straighter than they were, and he's already much more comfortable than he was even a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
So once you get this done to all of these different areas, we're doing several things. We're increasing blood supply through his entire body like it's supposed to be.
That's interesting because his legs have been so cold and so purple.
Yeah.
He's not getting proper blood supply because you have the femoral nerve that runs down through here. It will restrict blood supply if these muscles are all tight. And so if you're not getting the proper blood supply to these things, how can they grow properly? How can they, anyway, and then when they get to be 10, 11, 12 years old and they start having growing spurts and growing pains, it's because these tissues have been tight and contracted since before they were born. And then they're pulling at the attachments when the femur grows faster than the soft tissue around it, which causes all of the pain. The Seaver's disease that happens in their heel cord, right at their heel, is caused by the calves being too tight. Osgood-Schroeder disease, where they'll start developing a little bump on their kneecap, or just below the kneecap, is from all of these muscles up here being too tight and pulling on that. And that's debilitating. And usually we can take care. Usually we can take care of that in one visit with the kid. If they get this done, they probably will not develop it as they get older.
Good.
And you can tell just by looking at him that he's more comfortable than he was when he came in.
Yeah.
But this is just after getting hip flexors and lower extremities and low back released. He just ate, so he's resting, but this is typically the posture that babies take once we get just this portion opened up. Now, there's some issues with torticollis, so his neck is going to be very tight, and he'll be fussing a lot until it relaxes, but then he'll be back in this position, but much more comfortable. And then afterwards, we're going to have his mom breastfeed him again, and then see the difference of latch and everything else post getting his neck worked on as opposed to before. Something that's relatively uncomfortable for people to talk about is babies being abused most of the time because they've been crying nonstop. And like, I have 4 kids. I was sleep deprived for 8 years, 2 years with each kid. I wish I'd known this with my kids. I have a client who's a pediatrician specialist, and he came in one day. I had worked on his dog and his wife and him, and he said, "Hey, my last client was 2.5-month-old baby boy." And so blame them. He goes, he was thrown against the wall by his caregiver. And I was like, oh my God. And, you know, look, I understand, I get it, but we've been taught, feed them, burp them, change their diaper. And if that doesn't work, put them in their crib, turn the light out, and walk away. That's better than shaking them. It's better than throwing them or hitting them because they're in pain. But then the baby's crying by itself in a room in pain. And that kills me. And I just, there are ways to get a baby like this really quickly and actually take care of the issues so that they don't have to be crying, so that they can get more sleep, so that you can get more sleep, so that they can grow up more secure, more cuddled, more loved. Because it's hard to just wrap your arms around a prickly pear. I mean, it's a cactus. Because if they're always doing this, it's almost like many parents feel like their child doesn't love them because they push away because it hurts to be opened up. Yeah. And if they can be just against you flat and comfortable, the bonding that happens there is way different than
than babies that are in fighting all the time. And it's like, this is where they should be. And we're not even through his neck, the primary issue, why he brought him, but we'll get there. Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. Save the babies. It's just, it does. And it's like, it's so preventable, and it's just knowledge. It's just more information. And like I said before, I've been doing body work on people for over 30 years. I've been doing this type of work specifically for a good portion of that time, 28 years. And been doing work on infants now for over 11 years. And it's the same work. It just works with adults. It works with athletes. It works with infants and dogs. Anyway.